Hi, I'm Michael Tsai at the Data Room on Twitter. Um, we are here interviewing Tara. Would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
I'm Tara Javidi, and I'm here at the Plug and Play Summit. Nice meeting you, Michael.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
So I heard you're a professor and you're also a founder.
Yes. I'm a professor of electrical and computer engineering as well as data science at UC San Diego. And I've started a company. I'm the founding CTO of Cov AI, a company where we're really looking at next generation of AI systems that are built to make sense of large physical world, and in particular, mimicking and inspired by the way curiosity is a part of our intelligence that is missing in artificial intelligence. We don't think of um, intelligence when we say someone is smart. We don't think of them as sitting somewhere hoping data will be spoon-fed to them to be learning something from. We think of them as going out of the box, of going and finding the information that they're missing in the real physical world, despite our senses not being the best tools to collect data. So that's sort of where I'm obsessed
I think
about.
all our great breakthroughs have come through curiosity, right? I think some smart kids are very curious, but in schools you say, oh, stop paying attention to that, pay attention to this.
Yeah, I think curiosity is the way that we go around the fact that data is produced through sensors and sensing devices that are very limited compared to the richness of the world. So curiosity is our way to combat that.
Right, until you get a signal like, hey, something interesting is going on there.
Exactly.
What's going on there? Right?
Exactly. And I also know my ear is not very good, so I have to turn my head to figure out what's going on. I'm not going to rely on the limitations of my ear.
You're aware of it.
Exactly. You take that into account. The limitations of your physics of sensing is what makes you move in the world, actuate the world in order to get better data.
Right. So, I mean, there's that famous AI paper, attention is all you need, right? But I feel like I want to go a step beyond attention is all you need and say, okay, the next question is, if everything needs attention, then where do you put that attention?
Exactly.
I see curiosity as the function that determines, all right, given a limited budget of attention, do we allocate it here, here, or here, right?
Exactly. And in the physical world, you might also think about building physical attention, because it's not that I can, even if I wanted to have attention to everywhere, my sensors are limiting me into where I attend to, right? So you need to be mindful about where you put your physical attention. So that's another way that this gets kind of forced on you.
Right. I think you're limited by these physical constraints.
Exactly.
And even if you had like microphones everywhere picking up everything, right now you're going to have data overload. Say, all right, what data patterns are we going to pay more attention to versus less?
Exactly.
Now you mentioned these like physical sensors, right? I immediately connected to some of kind of our like drone work. I mean, we were looking at some of these like modern battlefields in Ukraine. And there's a constant game of trying to pick up signals and like acoustic sensors for drones or RF detection, and you're always constrained on how many sensors you can have and where, and you're trying to figure out where those blind spots are. So can you tell me about how you see these sort of physical sensors being deployed?
Yeah. So what is interesting about sensors, and you mentioned drones, so that's a great example, is that all sensors, cameras, vibration sensors, chemical sensors, they all follow this very simple universal rule. You bring the sensor close to the source, you get details. You take it away, you get coverage and context. Detail alone without the context is useless. Coverage alone without the detail is too coarse, right? So that's sort of the way I see this curiosity and activeness can come and help you is exactly, for example, for a drone, the very first example we experimented with and published was to use this idea of limitations in your views built into the model to change the elevation of the drone to sort of guide where to be curious. What are the things that look typical? I'm not going to bother. What are the areas the things have some signal that I should pay attention to and sort of physically get close? So indeed, that's a great example where you're providing a mobility platform for your sensors and stuff.
Yeah, I mean the way our systems are kind of architectured, right? It's like exactly as you said. At a high level, you have the coarseness, but you have the broad coverage, right? That's kind of where we start. But we're kind of looking through the fuzz and denoising to say, okay, we have this high level of coverage, but hey, that area looks a little interesting. Can we get more detail there?
Exactly.
And then that's when you drill down and deploy the more detailed
Exactly.
thing.
Exactly.
Obviously, if in an ideal world you could have detail everywhere, but that's very expensive.
Exactly. And that's exactly what our models that we work with are actually exactly built around. These are models that don't just ingest data, they actually are actively selecting which data is useful, both for inference but also for training.
And how are they determining what's useful? Like, what's the curiosity function here where your system will say, okay, this patch is less interesting, this patch is more interesting?
Yeah, the combination of things that we use is, first of all, when you have, and this is fact about humans, if you sit still, all of the signals sort of disappear. So that's why we move.
Oh, you see the kids are like fidgeting in the chair,
exactly.
Right?
So we learn how to actually move, and there are beautiful studies that shows that this is actually needed.
It's good for you.
For learning, but also for sensing, for you to get rid of the limitations of some of your sensors. So some parts of the movements and the actions that we put in the system are exactly like that. It creates a signature for you to be able to increase the SNR of your signal. Sometimes it's also the mismatch between what you expected to see and what you are seeing, and that the uncertainty is another guide that we use to actually zoom in. So the guide to zoom out is, I have been too focused, there is confirmation bias, I'm just doing something that is not
There's like a
giving,
natural heuristic.
Yeah, exactly.
And kids understand this.
Exactly. And that's basically what we have is a mathematical formulation that shows that heuristic is most useful when you have a scenario where your information is really, the information area is really large or is very noisy. And this is what I would argue the models that you're talking about, drones flying.
You need some dynamic equilibrium. And that's the thing, like we operate in a dynamic environment because like if we're actually very static in our data collection methods, like my axiom in warfighting and doctrine is like once you get too fixed, you get destroyed. Because the enemy knows, okay, Michael's surveillance system works this way. He always has this pattern that he follows. Now we can exploit that pattern. So you have to be a little unpredictable and dynamic. And I actually think it's a feature. And some kids are very good at it, but the school system like drills it out of them. Like some of the smartest kids in my educational work, right? I would joke. Sometimes you see kids are sitting in class, oh, it's so boring, right? I mean, we force kids to sit at a desk 8 hours a day, and eventually they're just like, like twiddling their legs and like fidgeting around. And the teacher's like, stop doing that, sit still, right? And at home, the parents are like, stop doing that, sit still.
I hope things have changed.
I would hope so. But I mean, if I was educating kids and they're doing that, I'll just let them be, Like it's not hurting anyone. And, if they're doing it, there's probably a need for it. Like systems will try to seek out some kind of equilibrium without you trying to like force it too much one way or another. And I think it's beautiful that you find that curiosity is the thing you want to focus on. Because I think so much of the world, even for centuries, is trying to just stamp out curiosity and say, no, here's the program. You must follow the fixed routine.
Yeah, I guess there is sort of the tension, right?
Mm-hmm.
As I said, it's sort of the trade-off is between you sort of focus, you get a lot of details, you kind of see the minute patterns that then are very useful to detect a longer scale of predictions and so on. But then the trade-off is you lose context and you constantly have to go back and forth between them and be dynamic about it. And this is something that I think we're at a particular point in time where we can do much better. We are building better mobility platforms. We have leapfrog advances in robotics, in connectedness, right? Like devices are connected, the better and better connectivity that the wireless medium has been utilized. So those put together with generative AI really brings us to a point that we really can explore these notions of curious AI in a serious fashion.
How did you get your inspiration for this idea of curious AI?
So I have to give that credit to my co-founder and CEO that he really, I use the technical term, the active learning or active inference to sort of emphasize the actuation of collecting sensors. And he was like, this is just too much technical jargon. I need to make it and unpack it for a general audience. So then we were looking, and I said, oh, this is what we call curiosity, and then we settled on that being the focus of our attention. But for me, it was like, I was like, you have to act. Your cell phone coverage is bad. What do? You move. You don't sit there, wait for
move
them.
Around, find a better place.
Find a better place.
You don't know what the better place is,
exactly.
But you know it's not here.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where it came from. Really, him seeing that this is a better way to explain the same technical concept.
Right, you're just kind of like dynamically searching for like a new local optimum.
Yeah, exactly, and not be stuck with one pattern of collecting information. Whether be it you're actively choosing which sensor gives you the best information. As you said, I have RF sensor, I have camera, I have radar. Which one do I actually choose at what granularity?
You can't say like one system is the best for all situations, right?
No, absolutely not.
Right, in our drone and counter drone work, right, we're looking at multi-spectrum sensing, and sometimes audio is the best sensor, sometimes RF is the best, sometimes thermal is the best. It really depends on the condition.
Exactly. And so that's one piece. It's like you want it to be multimodal. You want it to be hypothesis driven. What you just said. If I'm not getting the signal I want this place, I understand, is it a question of the limitations of my sensing and what will free me from those? So for example, we understand, all of us intuitively, even those who don't study wireless communication, understand the notion of a deep fade. You can be in a position and a location that the wireless wave is not really reaching your device, so better move it, right? So you're defeating you take the limitation of the sensor and build your intelligence on finding a way out.
Right, and you're describing like moving from like a bad situation to a better situation. On the flip side of that, I think there's these dream states where you have a confluence of factors. It's like almost like the planets aligning, and you get extremely high signal in one spot.
Exactly.
And sometimes the person there doesn't even know why they're getting such high signal.
Yeah.
But I think being able to tune into that and be like, hey, something interesting is going on here is so valuable.
Yeah, and that's what we call the opportunism. That's the other benefit of being active, is that you can actually opportunistically use the resource when it's in the best position to be utilized.
If like one of these like ultra high alpha spots somehow pops up, you're already in a position to harvest that.
So for example, we use that a lot in communication systems. If you want to send a bunch of packets, you're better off holding on to them and find one of those spots and then send them with higher rate at that point. So that delay that you postponed until you find that, then opportunistically send it, that actually makes it worth it. So in that sense, that's exactly what we do.
Right, and sometimes you're operating blind. I'll give an example I think maybe some non-technical people can relate to, right? Here's an example. They say, okay, new iPhone 17 Pro launched, right? And some people are like, oh, do I trade it in? My old phone now, is the deal going to be better? Do I wait for the Black Friday deal? Or do I do the deal now before it expires, right? And people don't know, like, oh, do I press the button now, or do I try to hold out for something better? Or if I hold out for something better, will it actually be better, or will it be even worse, right? And people have this sort of uncertainty, and they're always trying to make bets.
Exactly. And of course, we are humans, so there's decision-making biases that I just want to say that for a joke, because I teach this in my classes on uncertainty and betting, and I always teach them what is the right policy, that you can do. But I am one of those people that I always, when I have to pick the gas station, do I pick this one or should I wait for the next one? I always get trapped by my own biases of like regretting and like wanting to, it's always all these fallacies of like, oh, I have invested too much into it.
Sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah,
it's like
all of these fallacies. So it's one thing to know the theory, but then day to day, it's much harder to actually implement.
Right, and there's other theories behind that, like personal psychology and emotional.
Exactly.
Whatnot. I mean, there's a theory behind that too. Just like before, you see the people say, oh, are the kids always fidgeting around in the chair? Now you've come up with a theory of why they're fidgeting around in the chair. They're dynamically seeking something else, deliberately trying to create some movement in a too static environment.
Right. So maybe there is something.
There is a theory behind it. Just because we haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah,
Doesn't mean there's no
exactly.
theory.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Like-
true. So next time I'm getting, regretful of my song song fallacy, I'll just think about you. Think
Yeah. There was
would
another
be a
theory
reason.
behind that too. We just haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
I think people for thousands of years they've been looking at the sky seeing lightning, and the best theory they could come up with is it's the thunder god, it's the lightning god. But to me, having even like a partial theory is better than having no theory. The worst possible thing is like the caveman sees the lightning, is like, whatever, right? But
True.
your curiosity, like, why is that happening? What does that mean, right?
True.
And the best they could come up with, there must be a guy up there throwing lightning bolts. There must be a lightning god up there, right? Every single culture has a lightning god.
That's true.
But until, say, in the 1700s, Ben Franklin with the kite and the key and the electricity, they're like, so it's not the lightning god. There's actually electricity and whatever, right?
True.
So this placeholder theory of the lightning god carried humanity for thousands of years until we finally evolved the theory enough to the theory of electricity.
Yeah.
And now, like, we've mastered the lightning god. We know, okay, that was a placeholder. But I think for thousands of years, it was the best we could do, and it worked. And I'm actually proud of humanity for coming up with the idea of the lightning god, because if we hadn't, we'd just still became as like thunderbolt, whatever, like grunt, right? Whatever, grunt.
Yeah.
Curiosity is what brought us here.
Absolutely.
Another theory I like is like, hundreds of years before the germ theory of disease, there was something called miasma theory, like say in the 1200s. They just know like, everyone in the city seems to be getting sick, right? Why? And then the wise people of the time in Europe were like, there must be miasma, some sort of like toxic gas, right? A cloud of miasma that's making everyone sick.
Okay.
So then the theory is like, okay, so if there must be a miasma cloud over that city, so everyone's getting sick. So just stay away from the city, stay away from the cloud. This was hundreds of years before anyone knew what germs were.
Okay.
But that theory was actually pretty close to the truth, because, if there is a plague going on in the city, you do want to stay away, right?
Yeah.
This miasma cloud is a proxy for germs. And it was pretty accurate. 300 years later, they're like, someone invented a microscope and like, wait, how come this meat spoiled and this meat didn't, right? microbes. But these placeholder theories turn out to be accurate.
Yeah. Okay. So you have a placeholder theory for sunk cost fallacy.
I think so.
Okay, good.
I mean,
I want to hear, because I always feel bad, because I'm like, you know better. How can you get stuck in doing the same thing?
Right, because the thing is, like, there is a reason for us to be attached to sunk costs, because usually when you invest a lot into something, it has changed the equilibrium somewhat. In general, it's like, look, if I punched the wall 5 times already,
I see.
It's probably weaker than a wall I haven't punched 5. So
okay.
Right.
So you're saying the accumulation of the effort,
right, usually makes some kind of a dent, right? If my goal is to like break through the wall, maybe I punched that wall 5 times already versus I punched that wall 0 times. That wall's probably going to be weaker.
Okay.
But you can say, sunk cost fallacy. Don't you know you punched the wall already and it doesn't work? But it's probably weaker.
Yeah.
So there might.
That might be okay.
I just came up with that on the spot.
Good.
But
I'll give it some thought.
But usually, like, when people have a behavior, there's usually a reason for it. If they can't necessarily articulate how or why they feel that way, there's usually a reason. And I think introspection just kind of helps how you feel. Like, why do you feel this way? Or why did I arrive at this conclusion? Now, if you zoom out, sometimes you can say, this isn't actually rational, or it's actually optimal to do something else.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think in some therapies, right, like you've helped people realize, here's why you're behaving that way, because you're actually craving something else. Right. And some people say, yeah, you're right. This is the reason why I was doing A was actually because of B. So, I should re-engineer my behavior.
But I feel still about finding gas stations. You should trust the models you have built throughout the years as to what the gas station price range will be, and just live with it.
Yeah, and a lot of that time is data.
It doesn't matter if I have driven farther or not. That model is going to last, better.
I think that's the other thing with potential in the future, just like building up mass amounts of data to get the wisdom from that. I remember a long time ago, I was talking with my very elderly grandmother about just like traveling around to Taiwan. And then, I was getting ready to go to the airport, and she's like, blah, blah, you should, you're going to be late, blah, blah, hurry up. I was like, no, the flight's in this, right? I told her all the reasons my plan will work, and like she's being worried about nothing. And then she's like, "Oh no, you're in this scene and blah blah blah," and she kept like nudging me to like hurry up. I was like, "Come on, Grandma, you're being way too fussy, right?" But then I go there, and all these things, a whole confluence of events happened, and I actually was late because of. And then I was like, later, I'm like, "Grandma, how did you know?" Like, she's like, "I'm old. I know everything." And you know, that always stunned me, right? Things that my grandma said and did that seemed to be like prophetic or somehow magical. Now I realize she just has decades and decades and decades of training data that I didn't have. She probably has overseen so many airport trips that she knows, like, oh yeah, there's like a shift change here, and there's a mechanical hiccup here at the airport, and this kind of plane has like a perfect confluence of factors would have come up. So she knows in this situation you want to be extra early, and she was right. So I didn't realize that at the time. I was like, oh no, it's just bad luck in my favor that somehow my grandma always seems to be right. But now that I'm older and wiser, I was like, she's just operating on 90 years of training data.
Yeah, exactly.
That I didn't have. So data makes things smarter. So I mean, this whole curiosity thing, like, gosh, you know, there's a definition of information. Like, can I ask you, what is your definition of information?
So, for better or worse, I'm trained as an information theorist, and really this notion of information was debated quite a long time, and it was just really a part of philosophy more than anything. But almost all fields, economics and other fields had, and to some people's surprise, but some people's sort of satisfaction, Claude Shannon, I don't know if you're familiar with his work, really looked at information from the perspective of surprises and uncertainty. And he said, basically, anything you're telling me that I kind of expect you to say has less information than anything surprising. And sort of he connected the information to exactly the prediction. That like things that are predictable have low information content, things that are not predictable are high uncertainty, and he characterized this notion and quantified it. So for me, coming from that school, I'm always thinking about information in this context. Now he quantified it, and then he really looked at operational meaning of it, and that changes in different systems that you design. But I think the general intuition that connects uncertainty reduction to information is what I always consider information. If let's say I ask you like how much money you're willing to pay for a piece of information, you really have to ask yourself, if I have this piece of information, how much uncertainty it will reduce
how much of a difference will it make?
Exactly. It's like my uncertainty before having this information, my uncertainty after I know this information, and I should compare that level reduction. That's really the value of that information.
I think that gets to kind of my definition of information is a difference that makes a difference.
Okay.
And I think that it dovetails very nicely. Right? Like, you know, you're looking at a white wall. You know, you could say like it's a white wall. It's a short statement. Everyone can know what a white wall looks like. But if you tell a computer render this, right, is it going to say, okay, you know, millions of pixels and every single one is white? You know, that's a lot of individual granularity that you don't actually need.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can expand it to the semantic concept.
So, I mean, you talk about the surprises, right? That's, for me, that's fascinating as well. I'll be honest, I'm always chasing insights and surprises. Like I always like to say, very few things surprise me at this point. Everything's predictable. I mean, we're both coming from these like big data backgrounds, right? And you know, I was saying earlier, people are a lot more predictable than they think they are. People are a lot less special than they think they are. So that's when someone is acting in a surprising or unpredictable way. It's like, this person's different. They're onto something, right? And that's where the curiosity comes from. And it's like, what are they curious about? And I'm actually pretty similar to Mark Andreessen in this respect, where we both follow a lot of people from very diverse perspectives. And the idea is you have this sort of not just multimodal, but it is a multimodal, but multinodal network of people with different perspectives and information. And sometimes the confluence of them somehow ends up coming
Mhm.
together to be in this high signal area.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes they don't even know why. But I just noticed like, hey, this person's predictions have been extremely accurate for 3 months in a row. What's going on here, right? Because I follow some people, and sometimes most of the year they're just like kind of like background noise. Like, okay, yeah, they're just giving general, right wing talking points, general left wing talking points, whatever, whatever. But then some interesting happens, and maybe they just happen to be in the right place at the right time. But they're standing in a spot with extremely high signal all coming down on them at once, and they're all, at the same time their brain's processing it in a way where whatever comes out of their mouth is also extremely high signal. It's like, wait a minute, this person has called it right like every single time for the last 3 months. What do they
Yeah,
know?
in fact, we have studied this in combining these ideas from Shannon theoretic notions of information and network analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And we have seen exactly what you're saying, that if you look at the way, and this you can replicate it in human networks, but also you can do it in any kind of sensor networks, communication networks, and so on. When you look at nodes that they themselves are lacking information, so their signals are not giving them all full granularity about the world, if they talk to each other, they influence. There are, depending on the locations of the node in the network, what we call network centrality of the nodes, and the quality of the data that is available to them, the whole network can learn faster if these things align well. However, the danger is these same network dynamics are the ones where you actually can get stuck because there's adversaries in the system that will actually know that everybody will follow certain rules of learning.
They try to exploit it.
They exploit it by sticking with one, or even more adversarially, maybe they will add noise in ways that affects it. So there's a lot of really interesting phenomenons that you can study with these notions of information, which are about the uncertainty as well as the network effect, to really argue for certain rules of thumb that people use for learning, right?
As
like
well as
the diversity, the sort of taking similarities of ideas into account, the dissimilarities into account, and how can you build a robust yet diverse set of learning rules.
Yeah, I think you need to introduce like some smart gatekeeping, because like what you said, there's some adversarial actors. They say, hey, this movement or this idea is becoming too popular and we feel threatened by it, so we're going to try to infiltrate it or like manipulate the narrative or discredit it.
Yeah, exactly. And in the network, sometimes it's just a question of the quality of the data they have. Like, right, the data that they have has been poisoned, right? So there's adversarially, people have infiltrated the data set that people are training on and things like that. So it could be a lot more secondary what we consider adversarial effects.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that. I won't comment too much on what I've done, but they're right. Certain officials who like say a lot of things, but they're also unethical in other ways, and then you kind of put something into their information feed where they said something that's so woefully inaccurate that they discredit themselves. And then later they're like, oh, sorry, I got bad information. Sorry. But then they've also admitted to the public that, like, sorry, I am no longer a trustworthy information node, right? My own nodes are poisoned somehow. Or, like, I did a bad job at screening the information I was getting. But going back to the previous thing about, like, the sort of confluence of signal, right? I mean, you talk about, like, moving the device around to find, like, a spot with really good signal. I mean, I'll give you an example that I occasionally ran into. There's this one guy we follow each other, Walter Kern. He's a writer, and he admits like, hey, I'm not like a political science expert. I'm not like an AI expert or whatever. He's a writer. He's from the creative artist community, but sometimes he hits on a confluence of factors where he makes predictions and calls that are way more accurate than what all the experts are saying. Of course, it's not always true. There are times when the experts are right and he's a little more off target, but I just need to keep those nodes open that like whenever he has like a period of extremely high signal that I can tune into that and be like, hey, and I'll even be honest, even during 2024, like during the early months, there are some people in my network, they're saying like, oh, just like watch how the election progresses, and they're saying, oh yeah, if this happens, there's a very strong chance that certain people will try to assassinate Trump. And for me, I was like, I don't know, maybe. but then like in July, the assassination attempt happened, and then everyone's like, oh my god, right? But then certain people in my network are like, told you, Michael, I've been telling you this for months, and they're just very, very matter of fact about it. I was like, so I'm like, wait, so like they knew, right? Their prediction model of the world was more accurate on this one topic than other people's were, because they were not surprised by it.
So I will give you a completely different view. So I give this as a question to my class. Mm-hmm. Say you receive a letter from an investment firm mm-hmm. that predicts the market every day for the next month, and they are very correct. Mm-hmm. And the premise is, we'll predict for the next 30 days. We'll give you our prediction, and if it's correct, you can join, and then we will charge you some subscription fees for our predictions that will come out every month. And you sign up after 30 days that they have been perfect. You sign up, and they start not to be perfect. What happens?
Well, my first instinct, there's actually a version of this adversarial attack. I don't know if this is the case here, but the so-called prediction firm or investment firm will actually be segmenting their mailings. Exactly. So I'm part of 8 different cohorts, right? And then at each 8 different cohort, they give like the opposite bet.
Yeah, exactly.
But 50% of them will think, oh my god, this was
right. Exactly. So what I'm trying to get at is sometimes randomness is a question of, if you have a random outcome, something will happen, mm-hmm. right? And the matching will happen. It's just a question of the conditional chance that you will actually be able to get the right value. So the fact that random events occur should not move us too much into believing that there was.
Well, the question is, was it truly random, right? I'm curious, did everyone else in my neighborhood get the same letter as well?
Yeah, or exactly.
Was there a different group that they were? Because in this age of micro-targeted advertisements, they were telling the opposite thing.
Yeah, exactly. And some people make a lot of predictions, and some of those predictions. So there is the opposite version too, which is, if you make predictions on many different things, on some things you will be correct. Yeah. So that's sort of the questions of predictions are very difficult mm-hmm. and really interesting questions to really think about.
I think I'll be honest, for all its flaws, I'm still on Twitter a lot. And one thing I like about it is every prediction you make is mostly public. You can't predict A to one group and predict B to another group, right? And so whatever prediction you make is seen by everyone. And then if it was wrong, you pay a price for that.
Yeah, but I think on the other hand, and I guess you will say that there might be some other theory for it, but I think we are very selective in remembering what predictions were wrong and what predictions were right. True. Like when we think something bad will happen and we still go through and drive home and nothing bad happens, we don't think twice that I had that gut feeling.
It's a confirmation bias, right?
But if something bad happens, it's like, I knew it. I had this bad feeling, right? So this is also hard to disambiguate.
Although, I don't know, in the future, I think maybe with Neuralink or whatever, you could have a snapshot of your emotional state at any point where, if you actually did have a bad gut feeling at a certain moment, it would register.
Anti-causal.
Yeah, it's I actually did have a bad feeling about it. But I mean, I think the awareness that even if you have a bad gut feeling, but you're still going through with it anyways, you're still making a bet. It's okay, maybe 60% chance of a good outcome, 40% chance of bad.
But it's a question is, how much is just the random coincidence of the toss coin? Tossing any coins, they might coincide, and how much of it is really your gut feeling has some other indication that you're not capturing, right?
Right. But right now, a lot of this is anecdotal. People are operating on their own gut intuitions, and I feel when you zoom out and have high level data coming in from all these sensors, you're going to have a much better and bigger picture of it. Yeah. So where do you see this going with your startup's technology?
Oh, in terms of making sense about general,
right? Because again, sometimes if someone's flying blind, it's I just have to operate on my gut instinct. But people like me, we like having an information-rich environment. We like having sensors and people telling us everything.
Yeah. So some things we call gut instincts, I think in general are sort of summaries of all the features, and so that's what we are learning. That no model is going to look at all the data. There will be some feature summarization that, could that be just that? That's definitely something you want to take into account. Some of it is, as you said, as humans, we like to have theories about events.
Mhm.
So the same reason that the god of thunder was a valuable theory, we also do come up with patterns and see patterns where there is none. In fact, I don't know if you've been following this, like most of this like music streaming and such, if you put them on random, they do not play a song multiple times after each other because human beings don't buy that as being random. A random number generator will produce the same number in a row quite often. So these are things that we as humans, for whatever reason, we see patterns that are not necessary. We consider random as a certain pattern, not really true randomness the way that we understand it mathematically. So there might be also mismatches between what intuitively we call things and what mathematically we actually formalize them.
Although intuition can be shaped as well. Like you talk about random, like I think some kids might still think back to the standardized testing in schools, right? Mark multiple choice A, B, C, D, E, and then if they see like a lot of A's in a row, they're like, oh, this isn't. But the truth is, sometimes the teachers do just make everything A for a certain period just to make it easier. So I mean,
exactly.
You say human intuition about what's true and myth might be off, but I feel like that's also a dynamic evolution of all the lifetime experiences where you were told something was random, but it actually wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's what I'm saying is that it's hard to know the actual source of randomness. So that's why when we talk mathematically about randomness, we're very precise about what that means. But when we talk humans about randomness, we're naming a bunch of different things under the same umbrella, and that's what I'm exactly making the argument. That the fundamentally the job is different. When you're formalizing mathematical concepts, you come up with like a well-formed and complete constructs. When you're talking,
there's a lot of times
the point.
You're told something's random when it's not. Like a Kanye West song actually comes to my mind back from years ago, but he was talking about like, oh, I'm being searched by the TSA. The TSA is going through my bags and telling me it's random. Like come on, he's saying like, oh, it's because I'm black and I'm famous, so suddenly the random search always targets me because I'm politically incorrect, right? So I think there's just so many things in the real world where it's not actually random, but you're told it's random. So it becomes a loaded term. And I think with all these sensors and stuff, you kind of separate like what's objective versus like human intuition or bias. But the thing is, human bias isn't necessarily bad or unfounded.
And as I said, they're meant to capture different things, right? We talk about physical laws and interaction with other people. And similar, we use the same language, we think of them the same, but fundamentally the goal of science is somewhat to isolate this, and then now that we understand humans also follow a certain intuitions and responding to the world, then this line has gotten blurrier and blurrier, and that's why it's harder to even sometimes disambiguate what you mean in all of
hard because I mean these days a lot of people are like interrogating the various AI models, and they're just observationally saying, hey, GPT-4o is acting weird lately, or like they're telling me it's this model, but how come it's behaving differently than it was last week, right? It feels more censored, or it feels less censored, or certain topics seem to be avoided. How can we disintermediate all that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting. I mean, I think with the language models, things have been really different. I mean, I think as an educator, for me, the most interesting is how I have used language to help people learn, right? So partial credits, for all what it's worth, is, from my perspective, is my way of helping the students. They write half of the answer. I give them partial credit, so hopefully they will say, oh, I got half of this, let me go ask for the rest, right? And then I use that to then when they come to me, I read their partial answer and have used that to sort of deduce something about the reasoning steps, and not necessarily about their model of what prediction they can make about the next word. I have really used it as a proxy to help them as what is that they're misunderstanding about the course, right? Or about this topic or about the next step. And this is something that is fundamentally kind of changing, right? Now I'm realizing I can read a text that is partially correct and not necessarily mean or correspond to that reasoning that I was deducing it means, right? So it's a very interesting question.
Two people coming from different sets of assumptions.
Yeah, or if in fact, I mean, it shows that the patterns of producing these words is as a function of the context that has been provided is really dictating the structure of the word, the sentences. But when I am still grading my students, I'm trying to do more. I'm trying to help them figure out what was the mistake they did in what step of their reasoning. And that's something that's it puzzles me and it quite obsesses me. Like, what does it mean? How can I do this now that the students are potentially using ChatGPT to write the answer? Right.
Have you seen any very interesting patterns in your students' reasoning, or like how they arrived at certain conclusions, or do you feel like, if it's true that all these students are all using AI now, are they all starting to think like the AI tells them to think, or no?
I worry a little bit in the following sense that at least for my generation, hopefully, maybe that there will be a major disruption in ways we teach. But at least in my time, I thought of teaching as kind of non-existent. I always told my students, I can't teach you. I can inspire you to go learn. Learning for me, it's a very personal process in which you reason yourself and convince yourself that you know what you're doing. And through that process, you kind of follow the steps. So in that sense, I find learning is the core important thing. And the impact that I do worry is that in the process of learning, you have to make mistakes and you have to write down the wrong thing. And then you yourself be like, no, that doesn't make sense. I could have gone this way, and instead I went this way. Which one is correct? And so you have to convince yourself what is the correct for. And I'm talking about mathematical courses, right? Like if I'm teaching probability theory, or I'm teaching signals and systems, or linear algebra, or things like that.
Less subjective topics.
Yeah, no, nothing subjective, right? Like it's like you have to follow, and there is one answer to this. So for those, we have relied on the students' ability to kind of reason and use language to sound correct and get to the answer by repeating. And then at some point, they get convinced that now they know this is correct and this is not. And I worry that as any new tool is introduced, the way people will have to learn that skill will change. And this is a transition period that I don't know how this will change the way people patiently sit through and practice. It's some part of learning is just really practicing and repeating. And if that becomes too easy, I don't know what will substitute it for that.
It's kind of interesting. We've seen in LLMs, right? Some of the earlier versions, they could talk very confidently, but their math was all wrong. And they would confidently give the wrong answer to a complex math problem. And we see at the cutting edge now, people are talking about, international math Olympiad experts are being used to train next generation of LLMs, or they're trying to take expert LLMs and see how well they do on the world's hardest math problems compared to human experts. I feel like that's an interesting field. That's kind of where this cutting edge is going, at least for the confluence of math and LLMs.
Yeah, and I don't know if I feel, as I said, I feel like for people I can think of that are really good at math, I feel like they don't sound correct. They convince themselves they're correct. So they could argue, and then they can convince the other person that argument was correct or incorrect, right? So there is something that is about practice and convincing themselves. So it's a very personal, very individual process. It does not matter how many other people you're talking to. When you're writing your proof, if you found the proof or not, right? And that is going to change, right? Like if we become more dependent on these tools and assistance from these devices to do some of that work for us, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. It definitely shifts our way of learning in ways that I'm curious to see.
Okay. Well, zooming back out, over the next, years, right? How do you see your startup's technology changing this dynamic where, I'm a user in the future and I can be pulling in from all sorts of sensors and data? Like, how is that going to change my world and how I learn or how I operate?
So much of what we are saying and at the first step is going to be used for humans in the loop of decision making, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the sense that when we talk about dynamically choosing the sensors, you can also think of it as dynamically make suggestions to the user as this information needs attention, right? Mm-hmm. Here is the system. I have collected lots and lots of data, but I think this piece of data requires your attention.
Like at
These
this moment,
other ones,
switch to this lens, right?
Exactly. This is the lens that I want you to look at, or this is the decision that the model is making, but it requires your further investigation, and that's something that I think would be very, very interesting and an important part.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the future power users are going to be the ones who have the wisdom to make sense of all these different streams of information, and as well as know which lens to look at it through,
Exactly.
as well as when to switch. It's like, okay, this is the right lens, this is the wrong lens for this situation.
Exactly.
Right? I think that the era of sort of like rote follow the pattern is going away.
Yeah, it becomes more and more personalized and specialized, I should say, for the particular task. For sure.
Well, I'm very excited for that. I feel like it's going to be a very good future for certain types of people, including me.
Good.
I used to joke that the best AI builders and the best AI users are two different groups of people.
That's true.
Yeah, there's a great scene from James Bond where like Q builds like the supercar and he tries to like show this driving on the cell phone. And this was back in 1997. And he shows like, oh yeah, but the cell phone driving is kind of clunky and he almost crashes it. And James Bond grabs the phone. It's like, let me try it. And then he just drives it so expertly and like stops it 3 inches in front of them before hitting them. He's like, I got this, right? But I think, wow. So I think really the future is going to be a partnership between the best AI builders and the best AI users, and or even the more modern movie, right? If you watch Top Gun 2,
yeah.
Right, like in the beginning, Tom Cruise, he's flying the super jet at hypersonic speed. He didn't build it.
Sure.
The world's best builders built it, but he's the world's best pilot. Two different people. But that teamwork is what it's going to take.
Absolutely.
You have any closing thoughts for us?
No, I really enjoyed it. Thank you. It was a fantastic conversation.
Thank you. I hope we can speak more, and we look forward to seeing what comes out of your technology.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you for your time.